Len Renier, Wealth and Wisdom Institute. I want to thank you for taking some of your time today. We have an important discussion to share with you today and some of our training that's going on through 2021. And there are important factors because of the need for awareness and what's going on in our society, what's going on from taxes, what's going on from inflation. And we are talking about making you aware on the inside. The industry has left you behind on what's going on. They train you on the products and the illustrations and things like that, but they leave out the elements that make you a strong planner and someone that a client would want to talk to. So awareness is everything here, because it is a growing group of professionals at the Institute here that are deeply concerned about the direction we're heading and the impact it's going to have on everyone's financial life. And so the question remains all the time is, what do you see and what don't you see? You see, most of life's accidents and unintended consequences are the results of things you don't see, not the things you do see. And the barriers in our lives are the result of knowing only what we know and seeing only what we see. Most of life's accidents and unintended consequences are the results of things that we don't see. So we have to pay attention to what's going on underneath the radar when it comes to our planning efforts and it comes to the planning of our clients' financial futures. So what you see and what don't you see is very important. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about the buying power versus accumulation. Our industry is very famous for coming up with illustrations and charts and graphs and saying, here's what you can accumulate far into the future. And a lot of our training and our discussions talk about time, because a lot of people aren't aware that most of traditional planning takes 10, 20, 30 years for it to mature into what they want it to be in their lives. And people are running out of time. And the problem is that, we're talking about long elements, and there's a conflict here. Long elements in the planning process. There's an element here of conflict. The industry wants us to take a look at their profitability first, because their profitability comes from maintaining money under management for the longest period of time. That's our idea of a superior planning effort, is maintaining the client's money for the longest period of time. The client's goal is very simple. They want to achieve their financial goals in the least amount of time. So the question is, who's going to win this battle? We have to look at what's going on in traditional planning and the needs and the wants of the client. And Hiddenomics is an element that, we look at the economic trends and shifts that are impacting our clients' financial futures and how it's going to impact our industry. So buying power and accumulation is a very important conversation to have with a client. Buying power is the reality. Accumulation is the dream. We can sit back and show somebody an illustration with accumulations going out 20, 30 years. To give you an example, if somebody started their planning in the year 2000 with the idea of retiring in 2021 with $1 million, well, we could come up with the estimates how much they have to put away in a lump sum or on a monthly basis to achieve that number. The problem is, in 2021, the $1 million meant something. In 2000, $1 million meant something, but in the year 2021, $1 million isn't what it used to be. And so we have to take a look at that. In planning for $1 million starting in 2020, and say we achieve that financial goal 20 years later, and we look at it and say, well, that number is an accumulation. That is not buying power. The real buying power of that has dropped 31% in the last 20 years. So they have $690,000 of buying power when they thought they had $1 million for retirement. Now, the second problem comes into play when we realize that they have to pay the taxes on the $1 million if it was in a qualified plan. So now they owe 20, 30, 40% of taxes, and it comes out of buying power. So they end up with about $500,000 of buying power from $1 million plan 20 years later. How are we solving that problem? How are we bridging the gaps? We have to understand that, the real demographics that are going on in our country, if you're paying attention and if you're aware, is this. In the next 4 years, the United States will increase the number of taxpayers by 8%. In 4 years, the amount of US debt in the United States will increase 80%, according to their own numbers. We're going to go from $29 trillion of debt to $47 trillion of debt in 4 years. So how are we going to pay off debt with 8% increase in the number of taxpayers and an 80% increase in the debt? Do you believe taxes are going to be higher or lower in the future? So let's take a look at the Hiddenomics elements, because I want to tell clients this and not to scare them to death. But so I use the words very carefully. Knowing something can be really scary. Not knowing something, Mr. and Mrs. Client, can be disastrous. And we have to pay attention. Our awareness comes into play here. This is not on the illustration. This is not being trained by the companies for you. And the characteristics of greatness that you have inside you is the reason the client wants to deal with you, not the illustration. The illustration doesn't make you great. So Hiddenomics is an examination of the challenges and the myths and realities in traditional thinking. You know, the issues must be addressed that in many cases will impact financial planning results dramatically. Without this awareness, you know, what we're really dealing in is guesswork. Without awareness of what's going to be happening, not in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but the awareness of what that number represents 10, 20, 30 years from now. So I want to share with you a quick story about, I just got a new car in January, picked it up in January, and then I worked for a month down in Naples, Florida, and I came back and the new car had been sitting in the garage, and got back the first day and went to the bank. And on my way to the bank, somebody cut me off. I didn't have any contact with anybody, but I went over a curb, through a field, in between two poles, down a curb, across the intersection, slid sideways into another curb, and did about $9,000 of damage on a new car. You know, that was an accident. And my thought process was pretty funny about this. I looked at it and said, you know what, if I knew that accident was going to happen, I wouldn't have went in that route that day. If we know the accident is going to happen to us financially, why are we traveling down the same path that we have had in the last 20 years? If we know something is going to happen. And if we're aware of how that will impact not only you, your business, but your clients, it's going to be very important. You know, Hiddenomics is simply the role of the government in our financial future. It's talking about the economic trends and shifts and things you can share with your client in your discussions with them. You remember, our discussions are the most important thing we have with them, not the illustration. Our discussion in the first 5-10 minutes with a client is the determining time whether they want to deal with us or not. So your awareness of their lives, not the product. Everybody's got product awareness. The awareness of what's going on in their lives and how it's going to be impacted is very important. See, deep inside, they know, you know, it's very unsettling. And they're facing a lot of challenges in their lives today. You know, my question to a lot of people is, it's sort of a funny one, but it's not funny. Why does the government have to increase our taxes when they have no intent of ever paying this debt off? They simply just print more money. You know, and we have to pay attention to this. You know, I remember when the debt in our country was $4 trillion. So we have to understand that we're involved in a pretty wicked game in understanding what's going on. In the fiscal year, starts on October 1st of every year. The 2021 budget was set for $4.8 trillion. And 3.2 trillion of that is fixed, meaning, you know, that we have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. On December 6th of 2020, because the budget was set in 2020 for 2021. On December 6th of 2020, the entire 2021 budget had been spent. A total of 5 stimulus programs for COVID cost $5 trillion so far, and the estimated $2 trillion in deficit for the year, without any additional spending or any other emergencies that may pop up in our country. We have to understand that we're involved in transferring away our wealth to those who create the situation, control the outcomes, and profit from it. These are important words to have with your client because they're living in that world. They're not living in the illustration, they're living in the world, their world. And we have to understand that we need to communicate on their level, not the company's level. Here's the dilemma that I belong to some economic circles. Here's the dilemma that economists are saying. The reopening of the economy is an event, meaning this, it's a short period of time, maybe a year or so. It's not an economic trend, it's an event. But the government wants to tax us on the reopening of the economy as if it were a long period of time. They want to tax us for 10, 20, 30 years for this one event that lasts 1 year. And they want to spend the heck out of it for the opportunity to get programs in play that they want. And recent government spending is at $10 trillion in 1 year. The Federal Reserve is printing $60 billion a week. Now, a common person with a common thought process might think that that might cause some inflation, but the government is denying that that's true. What is your gut feeling on this? If we're never going to pay the debt back, there's interest on the debt, and with a growth of 8% taxpayers and 80% more debt, what do you think taxes are going to be in the future? So if given a choice in your life, which one would you choose? The lesser of two evils. Would you want inflation in your life? Or would we want to experience the collapse of the dollar? Or both of the above? I don't want to be an alarmist, but we're setting the stage for doing all of these. So we have to pay attention to what's going on in our future, in our industry, and in the lives of our clients. U.S. government debt in 2000 was at $5.6 trillion. The four-year projection going out from the source of the U.S. Treasury said we'll be at $49 trillion by 2025. That's an enormous surge in debt. And at what point in time does the dollar start to lose its value? The buying power. Remember what I said in the beginning. Buying power is more powerful than accumulation. Yet our industry is stuck on selling the accumulation number instead of the buying power number. The debt ratio to GDP, the four-year projection, is looking at 204%. Now here's the problem with GDP. A lot of countries across our planet, when they reach 160, 180% GDP in their own economic situation, they begin to realize on the dependency of the government. And socialism creeps in and they take over different industries. There's historical studies going on right now, as Venezuela and things like that, what's going on in South America, that this stuff doesn't work. Medicare and Medicaid, we're looking at an increase of, a relatively small increase compared to other things, but we'll be at $1.4 trillion or $1.8 trillion in 2025 on Medicare and Medicaid. And the unfunded Medicare and Medicaid liability will grow from $32 trillion to $40 trillion. And that was from the Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Management and Budget. So we look at Social Security, and all of these elements are going to be playing in to our planning efforts. Trust me on this one, because taxes are going to go up, regulation is going to go higher, and inflation is going to be have a great impact. Okay, so we're looking at Social Security elements. We're looking at unfunded liability of Social Security in 4 years, going up almost 20%, and unfunded liability, U.S. liability in 4 years, going over $207 trillion. And that's sourced again from the Congressional Budget Office. M2 money in circulation is money in circulation plus savings. In the M2 money in circulation, in 2021 is $19 $49.8 trillion. And 4 years later, it's going to be $49.9 trillion, according to the Federal Reserve. And we have to pay attention to this. And this goes into the discussion of why I know the market must continue to go up. You know, the market is measured on volume, not value, the measurement of volume. So the more money we print, there needs to be a correlation thought process between the number of dollars in circulation and how much money is flowing through the market, because it's measured on volume. If we want it tomorrow, if the government said we're printing another $20 trillion, the numbers in the market will go up because it's measured in volume. So we have to pay attention that, you know, the euphoria in the marketplace is there simply because there's simply more money in the marketplace than there was 20 years ago. The dollar ratios are alarming, because I'm old enough to remember when we were on the silver and gold standards. But right now, for every $12,000 that is printed by the federal government, the government holds in reserve 1 ounce of silver. For every $88,000 printed by the government holds 1 ounce of gold in reserve. So what's backing our fiat money? And how long will the world play along with the dollar being the standard measurement of the world when it comes to currency? And this is a big battle we're having with China, because China can fluctuate their values of their currency and we don't. And have you noticed that if we use the same methodology that was used in 1980 for inflation, if we use the 13 sectors of the economy that they used in 1980, inflation would be at 9.6%. But the government, in its wisdom, understood this, and they went from 13 sectors of the economy, and they changed that to 8 sectors of the economy in the 1990s, and down to 6 sectors of the economies in the early 2000s, and down to 3 sectors of the economy in 2012. And so now inflation, doesn't cover different elements in our society. It doesn't cover energy. It doesn't cover the cost of food. And another one, it doesn't cost taxes, or the increase in taxes that we must pay to maintain our lifestyle. You think about it for a second, and those 3 elements probably eat up 80%, not 80, let's say 60% of your paycheck on a weekly basis, but they're not measured in inflation. So are we going to feel inflation numbers hit us dramatically? Yes. If you're young and working and there's a correlation between pay increases and inflation, that's fine. But for seniors who are on fixed incomes, this element is going to be troubling. And we need to start talking about planning on a larger scale with the entire family, not just one element of the family. Median household incomes will have increased quite a bit over the last 25 years, but in as a picture of things, other things that increase, this is a relatively small increase compared to other things that have gone up. The average home price in 2000 was $165,000, and that's basically doubled in 25 years. Now we're seeing the increase in cost of other elements. I went on to a website called equipmentradar.com, and they measure, elements that go into manufacturing and things like that. Here are some of their statistical estimates from going from 2021 to 2023. The cost of oil will increase 80%. The cost of a barrel of corn or a bushel of corn will be up 69%. Steel up 145%. Wheat up 25%. Coffee up 34%. Cotton up 35%. Copper up 50%. Lumber up 126%. Soybeans up 71%. Home values up 8%. And we all want our home values to go up so that the government, our local governments, can tax us more on the property values. So it's a catch-22 in that situation. But there are many situations that we need to be aware of. The average price of an automobile, this is where our clients are living. All of these elements, this is where they're living. They're everyday elements that they're facing. The average healthcare cost in the last 25 years has tripled. even with all the elements that the government wanted to say that, look at, we got Obamacare, we got all this other stuff, and the pricing is been controlled. It's not. U.S. population will also increase in the next 4 years, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. But we have to pay attention to some of the dilemmas that we're facing right now. And according to MIT and Yale study done earlier this year, there isn't 11 million undocumented people in our country. There isn't 15 million, there's 22. This is from MIT and Yale. Now, 22 million people undocumented, that's more than the population of Delaware, Rhode Island, Montana, Maine, New Hampshire, Hawaii, West Virginia, Idaho, Nebraska, New Mexico, Kansas, Mississippi, and Arkansas combined. So if we are willing to, look at this and say, we are willing to increase our population by the size of 13 states and maintain the same tax elements that we're involved in right now, you're dreaming. We need to understand that there's a cost to everything that's going on down at the border. And some of the proposed tax changes, they're meeting some resistance right now, but some, I'll tell you what, most of it's going to happen, are increases in incomes, the Social Security tax for people making over $1 million, capital gains tax for some will go almost double. Estate thresholds will move from $11.7 million to as low as when they're finally done, the $3.5 million threshold to kick in the estate tax. Gift tax amounts will be reduced by 50% to $10,000 with a max of $20,000 per donor. Read that again. If you've got 5 kids, the maximum amount per donor is $20,000. And corporate tax rates are going to be pushed up. There is no business out there that has an increase in taxes and doesn't pass it on to the consumer. So once again, prices will go up. The loss of step up in basis has been talked about and is, part of this package is huge. I was down in Naples, Florida, doing business down there, and, I'm surrounded by $5 million homes that grandma bought, 30 years ago for $750,000. Now with the step up in basis, grandma leaves the planet and the family has to come up with, $4.3 million of taxable increases. And at what level will that be at? There's still not, it could be an estate tax level, or the step up in base level will hit you at 43%. And somehow you got to come up with a couple $1 million just to maintain that property from a tax step up in basis standpoint. Qualified plans, we're looking at, for somebody making a little bit of money, good money, the 26% credit ratio is going to hit them dramatically if you're in a 39% tax bracket. You're only be able to discount 26% of that, and then it's a credit. So we have to pay attention to and be aware of what's going on. And in the new plan, these are the main 3 where the government thinks they're going to recapture most of the money that they want. They think they're going to get 1.05 trillion from corporate tax and almost $1 trillion from Social Security tax on higher income earners, and half a $1 trillion from capital gains and the step up in basis. That number is really low. That 469 billion is really low for what they're looking at over a longer period of time. We have to pay attention, and I like telling clients this little statement all the time about free stuff. At what point does the mouse realize that the cheese in the trap is not free? Use that line in front of your clients once in a while, see the reaction on their face. At what point does the mouse realize that the cheese in the trap was not free? But the reality is when you look at this, then ask them this question. You have to understand who owns the trap. Think about that for a second. The aftermath is the future isn't, what it used to be. With inflation, regulation. These are all taxes. Inflation is a tax, regulation is a tax. You know, we have to pay attention to this stuff because it eats away at the buying power of our financial futures. You know, this is a very important time in history. And I'm going to tell you, marketing to people who think the way you do is the key. The key, as we talk about in our training and the characteristics of greatness, key is a, a, a simple word, but it means something. Keep evolving you. If you're not aware of what's going to be happening in their financial future, that's the key to their planning. So our goal is to keep involving you, keeping these stats in front of you so that you understand what is actually going on in your life and their lives. You know, and it's an important time for this type of conversation. This wording is on our site. You can use it as an email, and it's strong wording, but you know what? We have to have strong conversations in today's economy. We have to let them understand the battle that they're facing. You know, we have to discover whether what's going on is the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end for our country. I believe that we're pricing ourselves right out of existence when it comes to continuing this. We look at, you know, the 20-year that I didn't post on there, the 20-year debt in our country being over $100 trillion. How do we tax our way out of that? Or is there any intent of even paying it off? And how long before the dollar no longer becomes the measurement of currency in the global situation? You know, there's a lot of uncertainty when we sit down with our clients, a lot. And this is the discussion where our discussions should be focused on. The immediate impact for the pandemic and its aftermath. And then there's a residual impact. Heck, we got businesses closing here in my local area because they can't find workers. The fast food restaurants are closing on Sunday because they don't have workers. And the workers they do, you know, they can't work them 60 hours a week. So, you know, McDonald's, Arby's, things like that are closing on Sunday simply because of the environment. And there's a lot of uncertainty inside our clients' minds and the way they're living right now. Am I going to be working from home forever? Is the labor market going to change? Are my taxes going to go up? The value of my house just went up considerably, and now I'm facing increased taxes on that. But my income didn't keep pace with the increase in my property taxes. There's going to be a sudden euphoria. The market's going to tick up only because they printed so much money. And then that's going to be followed by you know, the gradual reality of what really is going to happen in the next 5 years. And that's just my take on it, and the take of many economists who look at, you know, this type of spending and this type of debt in a longer period of time. The immediate impact is decline anxiety, because right now they feel there's a lack of control. You know, they don't control the outcome, and the realization that they're not going to be prepared for retirement. And who's going to bail them out? Are we going to look at government dependency to solve all the problems in our country? Because that's where we're leaning, and we have to make sure that we are aware going down this path, there's an accident that will happen. You know, the residual impact is this. We've got 8 years of government programs trying to be pushed through the Senate and the Congress to be paid for with 15 to 20 years of future taxes. So we're spending now to have our next generation of our family and the country hopefully pay for all of this debt that we're running into. But the World Bank came out with an estimate last year and said, you know, on a private basis, on a personal basis, retirement shortfalls will be somewhere between $6 to $14 trillion in the United States. That's your IRAs, that's your 401ks. That's the shortfalls they're looking of people who have desires of retiring with, some type of really good retirement. The government believes that those shortfalls will be somewhere between $6 and $14 trillion in the next 5 years. And the Bank estimates that 51% of the now working people are expecting some type of inheritance from their parents to make up the shortfalls in their retirement. Think about that for a second. 25% of that 51% are expecting that inheritance to be their total retirement. Is anybody talking inheritances? Is anybody talking about family generational planning? Is anybody paying attention to this, or are we just chasing the stock market? Because we need to build some certainty into the financial future of our clients. Certainty and leverage, those are the two main elements. Hiddenomics is simply the impact of fragmented planning and not finishing the plan. Important conversations are going on, between some of our members and myself and presidents of companies. And, my last conversation with the president of an insurance company is, you're 1/10-cent attorney away from being sued, by not having the right conversations, because you're not finishing the plan. You're selling life insurance and annuities, and that accumulation in a Medicare, Medicaid nursing home stay is not protected. It's not exempt. Are we even having the discussion? And why isn't it exempt? Because it comes down to ownership. Do you have a trust, or does your family own it? These are fixes that can be made without selling additional product, but it leads to a great conversation about generational planning. I would safely say 95% of all the planners out there today are not finishing the plan. They're not taking a look at ownership. And, planning is fragmented in our industry so much. We got annuity specialists, we got investment specialists, we got long-term care specialists, we got specialists in every sector, but none of it's coordinated. It's time to look at this and finish the plan and protect the assets that our clients have. And there are 9 elements in Hiddenomics that we're going to pound on you and simply say, look, these 9 elements will destroy traditional financial planning assumptions: risk, taxes, regulation, inflation, depreciation, time, rates of return, the monetary unit, and accumulation. These things are the things that destroy future assumptions 10, 20, 30 years out down the road. And nobody's having these discussions. So we put them into training elements so you can share it with your client in 5 and 10-minute segments, so that you can put this out in front of your client and let them look at you and say, John, Len, what should I be doing? And that's planning. We're not paying attention. The 31% loss in the buying power of the dollar in the last 20 years is something that doesn't make headlines. And it changes dramatically the planning that we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. And we need to have a conversation with everybody that we sold an annuity to or cash value life insurance to and finish the plan. It will lead to other sales if you know how to use the language to get there. And here's an example. At $100, at 5.8% in 15 years will grow to $238 in accumulation in 15 years. If we apply the taxes and inflation over that 15-year period, we end up with $118, not $238. And you know what? That's a 1% rate of return on the buying power, not 5.8%. So we have to understand that what we're dealing with. And what do you see? So we are looking at the changes from the monetary situation in our country to the social changes that are, the population is demanding the right to this, the right to that, and there was a French guy back in the 1700s that said, this is not an endless right. Liberty and freedom is not an endless list of rights: the right to education, the right to health care, the right to food and housing. This is not freedom, that's dependency. And those are not rights. These are rations of the slavery that they'll allow you to have. So we want to talk to you. We need to get in front of the people training again. We're sponsoring uh, uh, small group symposiums. These are almost like personal symposiums. And we have one coming up in Mansfield, Ohio. If you're in the Ohio area, go to wealthandwisdominc.com, get involved in this one-day symposium. We're going to be covering a lot of areas and putting you in a position to have the greatest conversations with your clients, increasing your revenue, increasing the number of referrals, and really increasing the number of sales per client. You know, it's a one-day symposium. Give us a call at 734-261-9320 or go to wealthandwisdominc.com and register. Spin all the way down on the site. Go all the way down to the bottom of the site and you can register for the event. So I want to thank you for your time today. If you have any questions for our members, feel free to give me a call on my personal cell. And for people who aren't members, get to the symposium. This is a career-changing event, and it's gonna change your life forever. So with that, I want to thank you for your time today, and just have a great day, and go out there and do some good work with your people. Thank you very much. Have a great day.